Very good evening, friends. A very, very warm welcome to two immensely talented individuals this evening. Our author, Shibu Kochery, who has written a brilliant book called Faith and the Beloved. And he will be in conversation with a super talented lady, Ruma Chakraborty. And the discussion will be on Faith and the Beloved. I won't take up much time. I'll just quickly introduce them to you, and then we will have a riveting discussion on the book. So Ruma Chakraborty is a senior English faculty in a premium institution in Kolkata. Teaching is both a profession and a vocation for Ms. Chakraborty. It is but one of the hats donned by her, a painter, a budding poet, and compulsive storyteller. Currently, she is in the process of writing a compendium of short stories and poems. An alumni of Loreto School, St. Xavier's College, and Calcutta University, an intrepid traveler, a typical Bengali in matters of food, an example of the argumentative Indian, an inquisitive learner to boot. She is a quintessential Renaissance woman. Thank you, Ruma, for being on board this evening on the Readers and Writers Club. We are very honored and very happy to have you with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mona, for that lovely introduction.
Thank you. Kochery C Shibu, the best-selling and award-winning author of Men in Dreams in the Dhaladhar, graduated from the prestigious National Defense Academy, Khadakwasla, in 1981. He has served in the Indian Navy and commanded 2 warships. Post his retirement, he has executed hydroelectric projects in the Kaveri River Basin in Karnataka, Bias River Basin in Himachal, and Teesta River Basin in Sikkim. He holds a postgraduate degree in Defense Studies from Chennai University and an MA in English Literature from the Pune University. Shibu has changed tack from the snow-clad mountains to the blue oceans and has been associated with the setting up of a shipping company in India. Faith and the Beloved is his second book. Many of the characters in the novel are inspired from those whom he has encountered during his extensive travel. Kochery C Shibu was born in Kochi, Kangarpadi, and now lives in Bangalore with his wife and daughter. Thank you, Shibu. Thank you for coming again on the Readers and Writers Club. And we do look forward with a lot of excitement to the interaction between you and Ruma on the Faith and Beloved. Over to you, Ruma. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mona. Thank you so much.
Thank you. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome you, sir, on our Readers and Writers Club portal. And I'm sure the readers are absolutely intrigued by your new book, Faith and the Beloved. And I hope to bring out the various nuances and the things that really intrigue me about the book. I'm really looking forward to this wonderful interaction that I'm going to have with you. And I think to begin with, the very best place to begin is the beginning, as said Julie Andrews in The Sound of Music, and I'm going to start off with that. Just as Mona was introducing you, I was struck by, the travels, Kangarapadi, to National Defense Academy, Khadakwasla, to commandeering warships, working in the freezing temperatures of the Himalayas, in between managing hydroelectric projects in far-flung places like Karnataka, Himachal, and Sikkim, and yet finding time to postgraduate in 2 such diverse fields as defense studies and English. You seriously seem to be the kind of person who has seen and heard it all. So I would like to ask you, where does writing feature in this very amazing, mishmash of amazing things that you've done? So could you just tell our readers as to where writing figures and how did you come about to take it up so seriously?
Thank you, Ruma. Thank you so much. Of course, As with everyone, I must thank my school days and my teachers because my sparks for writing goes back to my school days. I studied in a school called Loyola School in Trivandrum. So that school had a kind of environment which was truly, that what I would say sparks that the curiosity in you and kind of creative spark in you. So the writer in me started way back from my school days. And after joining the National Defense Academy, and once you decide to become a career soldier, all the writing that I've done has been related to the military and the defense tactics, warfare, strategy, torpedoes, weapon acquisition, future planning, Vision 2020, Vision 2040. All those must be, thousands of papers must be gathering dust in the classified corners somewhere in that defense establishment. So, as a career soldier, there is no time for, indulgence for fiction writing, though I did take time out to do my post graduation in English literature from Pune University when I was on the staff in National Defense Academy in 87, 89. And that was, because I had decided that, I have to write and therefore you need a background in English literature. And the post graduation in defense studies in Chennai was part of a career soldier's life. And that was when you had done a staff course in Wellington, that's an OT. So the writer has always been there with me. I mean, all through, wherever I've been, I mean, there's nothing more enjoyable than writing. Put a pen to paper, and it takes a lot of time. And some of the things that it happens in your ways. So we used to in the defense establishment. I used to be in the think tank of the Navy way back. So there we had a challenge that the money from the government of India is cleared by the finance ministry and the Ministry of Defense, the bureaucracy, and most of them do not have any exposure to the military or the military matters before they come to the chair. So there was always a challenge of explaining a torpedo, why you want one, why you want maybe one with a longer range, why you want a submarine to perform like this, or why you want a anti-submarine equipment like this. There was always a challenge of explaining, complex technical matters in simple principles to them. And in very initially we used to think it's a joke because that how can you kind of what you call 20 years of understanding of a torpedo or a missile or a system into one paragraph so that and a finance guy can take a decision or not. So possibly that was the first time when you really realize how do you convert technical writing to simplified concepts. It was challenging but very interesting because then finally you really realize that if you're able to put across that one thought process in a couple of sentences, those guys are very sharp. They understand where if you understand the concept, you get the money. So I guess it's writing at every stage. It's your communication skills and writing skills in any profession, as it's very very important.
Which meant that your school, with its inspiring you to write, plus communication skills that you had to really hone in the Navy in order to get what you wanted by way of your resources, both those experiences, you kept that in your mind, you let it hone your skill, and then now what we see is actually the fruition of those years of utilizing the language well. Who would have thought that through the power corridors of the Navy comes a writer today before us? This is amazing, sir. I mean, I love the way you put what you've used as time off to communicate then to communicate to us, the readers today. I really like how you've put that across.
No, sure.
Which brings me to my second question.
Yeah.
When I was reading your book, Mona had told me that you've written the first book, and even you let me know it the other day, that Men and Dreams in the Dhauladar is your first book, and I remember you calling it a technical thriller because you said that it was about a very specific manner of writing a thriller, and it had to do with hydroelectric projects. So from the very technical thriller, Men and the Dreams in the Dhauladar, from there to Faith and the Beloved, which is an out-and-out racy thriller, edge of the seat, complete cliffhanger, keeps you riveted to your spot. How did you make that transition from a somewhat more staid and technical way of writing a thriller to something that would put literally put all our reading of thrillers like Sidney Sheldon or a Harold Robin to shame. How did you make that transition from the first to the second book?
So the first book when I wrote, when you prepare yourself to write for almost what I've got 3 decades, because the fiction writing requires serious research and requires time. The first book took me almost 4 years and 3,600 man writing hours before I could finish, research and writing, and then the 1 year for editing. So when you do that kind of writing, so I was, at that time you're thinking, you have read a whole lot of Booker Prize books, and that was in your mind. I said, okay. So I had done a phenomenal amount of research on, let's say, a lot of research in that, not only about the hydroelectric projects, which was from the background, about the culture and life of people. There's a Bakrawal community. And of course, the life of the workers in the project site, which no one ever writes. It's kind of a life which has got a very short lifespan of 5 or 6 years. And each hydro project site sets up a life which is decided by the people who are there and who work in that place. And it's what I call extraordinary life of the ordinary people, and who risk their life and limbs in doing things. And I believe that their story had to be told, and told to really minute detail. So that is one part. The second part is that, the classical style of writing, and there is that book also has got about a 1/3 portion is thriller part. And 1/3 is what I call technical fiction, which has gone above. My editor told me this too high. She brought it down to 1/3. And that 1/3 itself, many of the people found it too difficult. The regular readers found it difficult. So, but that's okay. That is the first book, so it had to be different. So a lot of effort went into it. And second is for men from the military, where wargaming is a part of your life. So time, space, events, and there it is not thrill, there it is danger and life. I guess it's a kind of a way of life. So in many ways, many of the things, to those people who have observed and paid attention to what they're doing, it's part of the job. The only difference is what a team of 20 people is doing there, or maybe 30 people are doing there in a war game. An author has to do it single-handed.
True.
So when you write, it's single-handed. So that is a challenge. Even the second book took me about 2 years in writing, and about 1,800 man hours, then after that editing, etc. So the transition by itself was not difficult, because the thriller category is something which I've been. There was a stage when I used to read a novel a day, and all kinds. So I guess that transition was not difficult, but it was challenging. That is what I would say, and I enjoy challenges.
And I would like to say that the result of your research is a dish very well cooked, which I'm absolutely hoping that the readers will also get a taste of, as I have done. And that brings me to another issue that rose in my mind when I first got your book. And when I held it in my hand, I was struck by the fact that, it says faith and the beloved. Now, sir, when we talk about faith, it has a spiritual connotation. Faith is a set of spiritual convictions. Whereas when we talk about beloved, the word beloved in its noun or adjective form means a loved one, a near and dear one, and it has a corporeal sense. So how did you manage to, or was it intentional, this business of bringing the spiritual as well as the corporeal in juxtaposition together in the heading? I mean, in the title, I found that amazing, the fact that you have put faith and the beloved in the same title. So would you like to tell us a little about that?
Yeah, I know. I mean, in the sense that the concept that being talked about here is, behavior of an individual is a reflection of his or her value system. And value system, as in our society, like any others, it's family, religion, school, and society. 4 major influences in your formative years, which decides your value system. And after you've grown up, above 12 years, or from the time whenever that child is discerning enough, then there is a lot of individualistic tuning which takes place onto how much of it to assimilate. So this book is talking about what you believe in and what is your value system, and how much are you going to stand by what you believe in, and how much are you going to stand for the people whom you love. So this faith, as we talk about this, is faith in what you believe in. So it is, I guess, it is a vast gamut. It covers spirituality, it covers religion, covers value system, covers everything.
Yes.
You believe, so you are. So, and of course, Beloved, it stands for the loved ones. So there comes times in your life when you have to cross the line. You have to decide: are you going to cross the line for your dear ones? Normally, you will be on one side, you're going against the norms of the society. Other side, you believe that you have to do this because otherwise, in your personal value system, you have failed. So the title in that sense captures that essence of the challenges of people who follow the value system and who believe and follow what they believe in.
Yeah, so what you're trying to say is that, there will come a time when your faith will be questioned, and will you be able to stand by your faith at that time for the sake of your beloved? That's a very beautiful way of looking at what you've put in your book. And I've also wanted to ask you a little bit about your craft. The fact is that when we were growing up, and thrillers was something that we really gravitated towards when we were of a certain age. I still read thrillers. I love them, and very unabashedly a fan of thrillers. I am. When we read a thriller, there are some writers, who will build up a slow pace and then take you towards the crescendo, and then there's going to be that final moment of denouement. Then there are going to be writers, who will drop broad hints at the writer and steer the reader's attention towards, the events that he wants the reader to pay attention to. And then there are writers who will begin with one big bang. Now you're in that last category where you begin with a huge aplomb. There's an absolutely explosive beginning from the word go. And I would say that the reader is completely hooked right on the first page. Even before the first chapter begins, you have this forward that you've called Where It Began, or Before It Began. And that last line of that is enough to keep you riveted to that book, because it creates such mystery. And then, of course, you have the first chapter where thrills, spills, chills happen at the drop of a hat. So tell me, sir, was it deliberate that you wanted to begin with such an aplomb right at the beginning, so that the reader doesn't run away, or the reader is completely hooked right at the first chapter?
I agree. This was a kind of that is one of the challenges which when you write a thriller and you think about where to pace it, how to start, it did require some thinking. I agree what you're saying. It did require a fair amount of thinking before I decided I will start. So there is no mystery in the beginning. You're starting off with an event. But if you see the first chapter, it has got a kind of blueprint and all hints for what is going to come to the rest of the book.
Later, yes.
Provided it's a discerning reader. So in case someone brushes through after 2-3 chapters, he or she will come back to the first chapter as to how does it link up. So I agree. Yes, even that what came before, what is in the before, it's a kind of it's a forerunner or primer to the events in the book.
It really piques the reader's curiosity. That last line of that Where It Began, or Before It Began, that last line and what you say in the first chapter are so closely linked and create such an impact on the reader's mind, because they are by that time so clued into what is going to happen later, they can't put the book down. Which is what happened with me. I could not put the book down. I read it at one go. And please understand, at my situation, reading a book at one go throughout the night is something that I used to do in the past. I don't remember doing it in the recent present, but I read it at one go. One can't read your book if not read at one go. One has to. It keeps you going that way. Which brings me to the next amazing thing that I found about your book is your characters. Be it Naiti Cheruzil, be it Alice, be it Tony D'Souza, who is also Kannan Acharya, or be it the two brothers Prem and Arun, or even Prakash Menon. I found their characters to be amazingly well delineated, but there's one issue that I need to raise with you. To many readers, their lifestyles or their choices that they make in their lives can appear to be immoral, at least, and at worst, amoral. So when you were writing about or when you were delineating their character with such clarity of intention and purpose, did you not fear a little bit of a backlash from the reading public, that their choices would be a little questioned?
Of course. That is one of the challenges to the author. The question is, it's like how much of good is good and how much of bad is bad. So there is always, so To give an example, it's like, I keep telling people, there is a currently an ongoing case. There's a girl by name Tabassum who in 2009, with the help of her lover, sedated her parents, her two brothers, and a sister-in-law and a small child, and axed them to death. Now, now her that she's a double postgraduate and the only daughter in the family who was supposed to be very dear to her parents. So now she's been sentenced to death and she's supposed to be hung. It has gone up to president and maybe she will be hung. Maybe it'll get gone further. If she's hung, she will be the first woman to be hung in independent India.
History, yes.
Okay.
The history of independent India,
Now
yes.
the question is, when I read that incident when it came in the media in 2009, anything happens in UP and BR, the first question thing that comes to your mind is it is not true. Somebody is being fixed. That she has been made a scapegoat.
Framed.
So we said,
Yes.
it'll come out that it'll come out later that somebody else has done it. So it went on for many years, and about 3-4 years down the line, when it sunk into you that indeed this girl had colluded with her one. So the whole issue was that the family was against a marriage which she wanted with some school dropout boy whom she wanted to marry. And the solution she found was finally to kill. Can you imagine? To sedate your parents, and that to a girl, and to chop the head off with an axe. Her father, mother, two brothers, one sister-in-law, and one small child. Unbelievable. But then she may be only one in the whole country, but there is one like.
Yes,
So
I mean,
the question
there are
is
instances.
that So question is one of the problems and challenges of writing a crime thriller is the fact is when you cross a line, there are people who are capable of crossing the line. So they are not ordinary mortals. And the crime by nature. So let's say when you talk about ISI as a background, ISI is known possibly second only to CIA and Mossad for using women in the world. They're very good at that.
Yes.
Using women into all kinds of things. So if you bring in ISI, there is no way ISI can come in without women coming in. Similarly, LTT had used women extensively. I mean, they used a girl to knock off a prime minister, ex-prime minister.
Exactly.
So when you talk about the events and the context in which the book is dealt, it is quite off what I call 3 standard deviation, beyond 3 sigma. So I agree that some of the readers, and specifically many of the people will find it that the choices of the characters are not palatable to a drawing room environment. It is not palatable to what we consider as, let's say, the socially acceptable norms. But then
Yes, norms.
the fact is, you have, let's say, one does not wish a Nirbhaya case to take place, but it did take place, and there was a teenage boy there involved who was the most the violent
Underage.
of the underage person.
Most underage and the most violent, yes.
Most violent. Now the question is, the current system has spared him, but one will feel the thing twice. So traditionally in Indian system, the child ages up to 12. After 12, if you know, all religions, all communities expect you to, take responsibility for your actions and act an adult. 18 is the Western concept. So okay, so these are all challenges. So I suppose I accept that while writing a book, the author has a challenge of how much of good is good, how much of bad is bad. So you strike a parallel. And the character sketching when you do, and I spend a lot of time on that because even before I start writing a novel, I most of the time is spent in character sketching. And as a matter of fact, one of the reasons you will find that I've gone into the background of each character, he's got a past and a present. There's no major character that nobody with just jumps into the present scenario.
True.
So when you develop characters like that, you do a fair amount of research and sketch a character. And after that, you've given a value system to the character, and he or she follows that. Then, right or wrong, I leave it to the readers to decide.
Readers.
And I do know I have had mixed reviews, and there are some readers who have been very vocal about it and said, that this kind of writing should not be allowed, or not be allowed. I mean, to say it's they have not liked it. Let me put it that way.
True.
But
because I wanted to tell you
that
that you have references to graphic rape fantasy, and then you use the themes of love and lust and intrigue and revenge, and all those things when they are at play, then things are not going to be very copybook. But of course, you're a writer, and there is a certain poetic license that you are allowed, and I suppose the readers can use their discretion whenever it is possible when they're reading it. However, it does make for an amazing cocktail of events, and I think that when we're talking about characters, and this I must ask you, when a novelist writes a novel, he usually puts a lot of stress on drawing out and delineating the major characters. They're all very well rounded and there are nuances to their character. However, strangely, I found that you people your novel with people who are, walk through characters or minor characters, but who are as believable, as well etched as your main characters. I mean, I'm going to run out of names to run out of time to recount the names. Which one isn't? Rosalind, even Angelina, even Polos Mapilla, who we hear as the grandfather and not really see him, but we hear about him, and we hear about him through the words of Mariam Kutti Pengal. She's a fabulously well-etched character. You can almost see her, that old family retainer who's become like a family matriarch. Then you have somebody like, say, Zainab or Tasneem, who is, as you said, a terrorist. But she's an eminently likable terrorist, and she walks through phases of the book. And these are not really the main characters. They're in the periphery. And yet, you draw them out so well. I mean, they each seem believable. There is not a single one of them who seems far-fetched or make-believe. How do you do that? How do you even make the not so important characters quite so well-etched?
So and that part is accept. Like I said, when you write a fiction, there are books which are, let's say, plot or theme-based novels, or there are books which are character-based. So I have, from the beginning followed that character-based writing, wherein I etched the characters first. So as a matter of fact, when I was writing for this novel, I had as many as 200 characters in my annual. I had prepared up to 200 characters. So because I had this story in my mind, stories keep churning in my mind. There is no time when a story is not churning in my mind. So, and as I started writing, I picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then you start adapting them to the, let's say, the storyline that you're building out. So there are two challenges. One, that when you written a character, he or she was not written for the plot.
Right.
So whether it is you're talking about the Thakur, or you're about Angelina, or you're talking about the Mariam Kutti Pengal, all of them are standalone characters. As I've told in my interviews before also, when you see a Hindi movie, the difference between a villain and a hero is that villain has a past and a hero has a past and villain doesn't. So whatever the hero is, there is a past which justifies his present. So the viewers empathize with him. And the villain, of course, is left blank. Now, it is a deliberate choice that I didn't want any villains and heroes. They're all grey. So there is no one guy who's perfect in
absolutely. There's nobody who's white and nobody who's black. I mean, they're all in various, permutation combinations of gray, which is amazing. And I particularly like the way they keep flitting in and out of the action and seem to be such a wonderful support cast to the other characters who are, maybe protagonists, I can call them. And they kind of, emphasize on their characteristics and sometimes even draw away from the main characters in a sort of a relief in the middle of the novel. I mean, they seem to have lives of their own. A character like Bhanu Pratap, I mean, he's so believable. I can almost picturize somebody like that in my locality. I mean, there is one person who really bears resemblance to Bhanu's life. And it came as a shock that, your characters are so real. They are not make-believe. They're not mangalant, as they say in Hindi. So they're like real people. They're like flesh and blood. How do you do? I mean, how much of time do you spend on getting characters
that part I accept. It does take time. It does take time. Because character sketching is about, so one thing is, any event that you read, even whether you see on the television or the newspaper, or even, these days in the social media, if something is of interest of an event happening, something happening, you take a note. If you think that event or that individual, what he or she has done is could be of use in a potential use in a thing, you capture. So like that, it's an ongoing process of keeping abreast of what's happening and being observant of people and events and capturing them. So later on, of course, these are all, when you see an event or an individual, you capture, and then of course you adapt them in your own mind, make some changes, and keep them with you. So this happens in various ways. Some of them are, so not even one is a lift off of, that Nethi means so and so, or that Arun means so and so. No, it is not a lift off. But they are all people who have been in this kind of situations, and you have seen or read enough. So you capture, and I agree with you that it does take. So, for example, the what came before, you're starting about 1930s.
Yes,
It's about
1930s.
the 1930s. So that's the time when we had what was called Janevu Andolan, and Baba Sahib Ambedkar and people were almost falling out with Gandhi because they thought the Dalits were not being represented well.
Right.
And that was a period when people did, some of these kind of events have happened. I'm not saying this is alluding to this particular person or this particular incident, but similar instances have happened where people have tried to break shackle, break out of that caste, and make a new living, as they call it,
And the
breaking out
and
of
the
the
fact
caste
that you
shackle.
have the character in that very first bit, wearing back the blood-soaked Janu. I mean, that I found was very, telling about the times, the social
Yes,
milieu
yes,
of
it
that time.
is. Yes, it is.
And
So to that extent, so when you go around and making, so it does call for a lot of research when each time when you're putting a character, whether it's the similarly even for that the whether it's a background of LTT or it's a terror attack. So the phenomenal amount of research and reading goes into when you put a character into a situation, and then you say that what you sketched, you think it is correct or not. So as a matter of fact, 80% of my time goes in character sketching in my
I'm
times
going to
that I
take
spend.
on to what you just said. You mentioned the LTT. I would like to ask you that usually when we read a thriller is very high on adrenaline quotient, and it really asks us to have a willing suspension of disbelief because many of the things are very make believe, okay, and quite outlandish also sometimes. However, your thriller is actually rooted in actual political events, which you have really woven very well with the lives of your major characters, the ups and downs of their lives. You have a major portion of the novel being all about the LTTE and their sleeper cells. You have, a lot of geopolitics and ecopolitics being put into your novel. You have also got the serial blasts of Mumbai. Then you have talked prominently about the attack on Mumbai on the 26th of November. These are real events, real historical events, which very fresh in the public's mind. Now, to take real historical events and to weave it into a novel so believing, in such a believable form that people almost believe that, yeah, it could have happened. These things could have happened during the times of these. So, how do you integrate these real life situations or these real historical events so well into your novel?
Yeah, I agree. That's another of my passions. I'm a kind of history buff in many ways. So we believe, I mean, at least I believe that, reading events and understanding them for yourself as a reader is very important because today uh, you have three newspapers. I will have three perspective on the same event. I watch three, English channels, there will be three more perspectives. If I watch three Hindi channels, there is another three perspective. If I watch three Bengali channels, I will have some more perspective. So
True.
the prism of history or prism of events is presented by the media today. It's colored by various media, whether it's print or electronic, in their own way. Facts and figures remain the same, but there's phenomenal amount of coloring which takes place and which, unless it's a discerning reader, he or she gets just carried away. So one of the things I try to do in all my novels is to try to give discerning perspective on events in history without giving any color to it. So that also calls for a fair amount of research again. So when the reader reads through, this is not about who won that war between LTT and the government and who
True.
lost, but it's about what are the struggles, what people did, and how it affected people, and what are the causes. Because I also believe it is important for people to understand that because we should not, if you do not understand history, we end up making the same mistakes.
True.
And understanding our own history, and unfortunately for us, the writing of Indian history has not been very responsible by the British or the Western authors who have written. It's not that it is all wrong. They have been very selective in selecting facts. Whatever they stated may be factually correct, but it's like telling the truth selectively or truth conveniently, and not really giving a whole perspective. So,
It's
for
colored.
example,
Yes,
when it is
a lot of.
colored. So, to give an example, as students of history in school, I don't know what is the current day teaching says that, Muhammad Ghazni invaded, Muhammad Ghori invaded, the invasions
Yes,
came and
yes.
they came and they went. But no one tells you that, Maharaja Ranjit Singh went and defeated that Shah in Afghanistan and got that gate of that Somnath temple back. So it is not that we're all been, that Indian kings have been useless. They have also done their bit. Or that, you had the Chola Empire which ruled India for 1200 years. It had a whole of
Yes.
Southeast Asia. I mean, the whole of Southeast Asia, Burma, Indonesia, Malaysia, Vietnam, all the way they went to the Philippines.
Philippines.
But you find a passing mention. So the whole question is that means it is, the history. And, when you read even about the independent struggle, the Britishers did not rule India just to rule India. They wanted to make money. In the 200 years that they ruled, if I'm to believe the studies that they have given, they have taken out $38 trillion of money from this country. Current value, I'm telling. $38 trillion. And today, the GST that we pay center government in a year, maybe about $7 billion or $8 billion at the most. In 200 years also, that only becomes $1.6 trillion. Where does the rest come from? So you can imagine the amount of exploitation they would have done. So so even as students of history, they all talk about, someone should, that, Bhagat Singh did this or somebody else did this. But unless you have a grip of what the Britishers are doing, and Gandhiji was the only guy who really understood that they're after money and he hit them where it hurt. Be Indian, buy Indian. You kill their, whatever that
Absolutely.
they're trying to sell.
Cut off their
So,
source of making money, and
source of
they
making money. So
sort of
he
crumble.
understood that game. He could get the, he said it is not about fighting them with guns and, it is not that struggle, but he went about it, I mean, what you call a master strategist. You must give it to him. Such a visionary. That it was whatever he said, ahimsa or whatever he said, all those ideas he came up with boycott, non cooperation,
Deshi.
Kherao, or, be Indian, buy Indian, Swadeshi. Everything was, aimed at hitting them where it hurts and hurts the most, where they cannot make money. So I said, it's like when you students of history, what we read today, of course, a lot of information is available in the media for students to read, but there's an over information. You do not know which to trust, which not
Yes,
to trust.
yes.
So
True. You
I
don't know
follow
the
one guy
veracity of
called
the
Dr.
information
E.K.
is not there. Okay,
I
since you
follow
talked
somebody
about
called,
researching
yeah,
so much, and we can understand, the readers can understand that you have an absolutely minute eye for detail, and I want to draw the reader's attention to a few of the things that he has talked minutely about and with such precision, because it shows a tremendous amount of research. Let's take it for instance. You have a background in hydraulic projects, so the project that you described in Jorthang, Sikkim, is done with such eye for precision. It is absolutely real. Or you've talked about the computer hacking that both Alice and Jishnu do, and you've talked about it in such great details that it is totally believable. On the other hand, you talk about Kurupji teaching Prem the intricacies of the principle of Kalaripayata, and that also has been done with great details. Then, of course, you have Mia Saib getting hold of those plates and counterfeiting currency. Not a minute did the reader feel that this can't be true. This is like make believe, and what is he talking about? It felt completely real. You have even talked about this nexus between, and it is real. We've actually seen it happening. This nexus between tour guides and the shops that lie around the tourist attractions. In India, it's a real, mili bhagat, as they say, the typical chor mandali that they create out of that. You will bring the foreign tourists to my shop. I will give you a cut from there, and I will hike my price 4 times. It is so believable. I mean, there is not a single thing that you write in the book that seems made up or make believe. It seems completely and completely real. Effortless, it seems. It isn't effortless, of course. We want to know your effort into making it so well researched. I'm really very hung up about the amount of research that you seem to have done about this book. That's
No,
mind blowing.
I agree. I agree because see the each thing that when I write, so it does take effort. So you mentioned about all those things are true. What you said, whatever that there's a phenomenal amount of research. Even thing like let's say tourism. Of course, that was a takeoff from he thought somewhere in we got ripped off once. So then I spoke to somebody, spoke to a friend who's in the industry, then met a guy who works as a tour guide and spent some time with him. So then he explained as to how this ripoff is organized. So So it takes time because it doesn't just come out like that. A lot of this information is not in the open domain. So a
Yes,
lot
because
of the
even
practices.
when you describe the the Syrian Christian religious uh, occasions of the Cherozil family, and I have had Christian friends from Ernakulam. It, it struck me as being so real because that is something that I have experienced myself. So when the reader reads, he doesn't believe that he's reading a story. It seems so real, and it's a thriller. Mind you, a thriller has a very bad name for not being one of the greatest literary uh, outpourings, perhaps, of a writer. But this one is a very different kind of a thriller. Um, I think, seriously, I'm going to take a permission from you now. The readers have been hearing a lot about me discussing your book, the characterization, the research that has gone into it, the amazing events, the thrilling events that happen. And it's going to be a shame if we don't give them a taste of your book. At least a little curtain raiser is essential. And I'm going to take your permission and I'm going to read a small little excerpt from the very first chapter because that's what got me hooked. And I think I would like to read out just a wee bit of a paragraph from one of from your first.
Sure, please do.
And I'll take your permission for it. And I'd like to read out that bit which I think is the most volatile, the one that
Okay.
really escalates the action. Uh, you two are after the diamonds, like your stupid mom. That is Tiger's property. They are coming to collect it. How could you? Tony stood there looking disbelievingly at the knife plunged into his chest and the blood oozing out. I will kill you with my hands to pieces. Tony shouted and charged towards her with his arms flung open. As he let go of his hand from the chest, a fountain of blood spurted out. He paused to squeeze the wound tight again. Look at me, you stupid girl. Tony commanded as he pointed the revolver towards her and started clutching his chest even more firmly with the other hand. He stumbled as he fired. Alice heard the bullet whiz past and strike the glass behind as it shattered. He fired again as his hand wavered and she stood there, frozen as another bullet whizzed past. He had a stupid grin on his face as he ambled towards her with a massive erection. Alice looked at his bloodless menace as it stood up like a gun about to fire. A knife will add to the fun. I told you I can do it. After 3 stiffs. Tony mumbled with a grin as he charged towards her. Blood spurted from his chest and splashed on her as he neared her. He paused with a look of surprise at the blood fountain, which was all over his body. Alice woke up from her stupor, ducked, and moved to the side. The revolver fell out of his hand as he tried to pin her to the French window. Alice heard him mutter as Tony almost collapsed and fell on a small table near the French window. His body stood there, awkwardly poised on the table and supported by the French window frame. Alice watched for a few seconds as the blood kept flowing out. She noticed the revolver with the silencer lying on the ground. The curtains were drawn on the French windows. There were 2 holes where the bullets had passed through. She paused for a while and felt a load off her chest as she watched the well-chiseled naked body leaning against the French window, very dead and like a Roman statue. She stood silently and listened out for the noises from the outside. She was not sure if anyone had noticed the gunshots and the breaking of the glass. She felt relieved by the sound of silence all around. Alice put on a pair of rubber kitchen gloves and 2 pairs of socks. She tiptoed to the cupboard that Tony had left ajar and looked carefully into the safe, which was lying open. There were 2 small brass statues, one of a laughing Buddha and the other of Lord Ganesh. There were a few bundles of $100 bills and 1,000 rupee notes. She lifted the brass statues and was surprised by their weight and exquisite workmanship. An old rudimentary Nokia phone at the bottom of the safe caught her attention. As she lifted the phone, she noticed one half of an old $500 bill. Alice looked around for the other half and knew it was only one half of a bill. She placed it back in the safe. She was familiar with the voice-only Nokia phones that were allowed in their school hostel. She powered the phones on and a smile crossed her face as she started typing a message. Allah's black diamonds are forever. Only the blessed can possess them. Alice sent an SMS to the first mobile number that came up and her heart started pounding as she sent the message. Get well, darling. We'll keep diamonds for you. They are after me. Alice sent a second message to her mother's phone, her heart beating faster now. Tiger's dollar bill, not okay. No deal without match. Alice sent an SMS to the next mobile number that came up. She could hear her heart beating, like drums in her ears, as she sent out the third message. Your delivery boys need to improve. Alice smiled and sent the next message to the fourth number. She thought her heart would burst as she sent the message and immediately powered off the phone. She stood there leaning against the cupboard for a few minutes, gasping for breath. She gathered courage and powered on the Nokia phone again. She copied the 3 mobile numbers and the 2 landline numbers onto her mobile. Alice felt her adrenaline pump as she dialed the next number, which was a landline number from Mumbai, and cut the call after one ring. She dialed the next number, which was also a landline from Mumbai, and cut the call after one ring. She powered off the phone and paused to gather her breath. Now I'm going to keep it there and tell you exactly what happened, readers. After this, there is a huge explosion of a gas cylinder bursting. An entire one side of the flat blows out into the street, and Alice makes a quick exit. That is the first chapter. If that doesn't intrigue you, then I do not know what will. Which brings me to possibly the last question, because we are nearing the end of our time. I do have a lot more questions, but we'll have to reserve that for some other outing. Now, what lies uppermost in my mind? I have read an excerpt of Men and Dreams in the Dhauladhar. There's a PDF excerpt somewhere on the net. And I have read this book. That is, of course, a very different kind of a book. And this, of course, is the racy thriller that it is. Which brings me to my next question. And I think it's uppermost on every reader's mind who would have gone through this one. What's next? Because you have really raised expectations. So what are you going to give us next? What are you writing? Are you writing another one?
I have not started
if so,
writing,
can you give
but
us
of course,
a curtain raiser?
Some ideas are churning in my mind. I will start writing by next year. Of course, I'll come up with a book next year. That's for certain. And it will be a little different from the first two. I have not, that was my decision that I've, just for your information, I stopped reading fiction in 2009 when I started writing.
Why?
Because I used to be a voracious fiction reader before that. And one of the reasons I did that was to establish a writing style which is uniquely Shibu, and not influenced by anything that I may be reading at that point in time. Of course, it has got a flip side that I'm not current on reading fiction which is happening. So that's a penalty I have to pay. So I decided I'll write 3 books. Now 2 are out. Third one will be different. The only thing that will be common will be the prism of history. There will be a prism of history in it. And of course, I have not really, kind of made a blueprint in my mind yet. There are 2-3 ideas turning in my mind. I'll start putting pen to paper next year. And it should come out. And of course, my character sketching is happening as always. It's an ongoing process. You will get a book and it will be different. And
I think you want to now sign off with the readers by maybe repeating what Kannan hears in his mind about what his father had said. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correct, but I think he says Kanna Moraru Nal Poratawala. It means live to fight another day. So
yes,
I think
Fabian tactics. Yes.
Yes, and I think you are telling us that we should survive and live another day to be there to read your third book, which I'm quite sure we're looking forward to. And since you have told us that it will again be rooted in history and will be as well researched as this one, I can say this with some veracity that yes, our readers are definitely looking forward to it. And while we are at it, I think we'll have to take a few questions that maybe readers have actually asked us. Let's check if I can.
Sure.
If there are any questions. Shushuta, you'll have to help me out a little bit because I am a little caught up here. Can you see any of the questions that the readers might have had for the author, which I think is only fair that we ask?
Yeah, there are a few comments which I can see right now, but there are no questions right now. Okay.
Yes, I would ask our readers to perhaps direct some questions to our author,
So,
because
like Amita was saying, he has written like period piece perspective dynamics so lucidly being explained by you, sir. And he has written that the prose rolling on with the poetic energy as perceived by
yes,
the mellifluous rendition of Ruma. Looking forward to poring over the text. So, learning the art of characterization is in an unique manner. So these are the few like comments which I have seen right now. But the viewers are really good. A lot of people they have watched the session, and I think
okay, and I'm hoping that a lot of people from various cross sections of life who have joined in this discussion and who are listening into this discussion have benefited from the kind of delineation of character that you've done, or the aim and the role of research in writing even a racy thriller, because a lot of bad name goes into the makings of a racy thriller. But what people fail to understand is that your thriller is loaded with a lot of research and information, which is so lucidly put forward that one doesn't even realize that I'm reading a lot of well-researched matter. And I think that's where the success of your story lies. That it's a thriller. Yes, it is. It's an out-and-out thriller, a cliffhanger, in fact. But it's also filled with amazing amount of fabulous research. This
and
is
two
what we
more like
want.
that's right, and
Yes,
two more comments like Mamta
yes,
Goswami.
please.
She has written love the session, and Navanita Sengupta she has written fantastic session, absolutely riveting. Looking forward to reading the book. So
Yes,
these are the comments that are pouring
yes.
in right now.
These are the kind of comments that I was hoping that this session would draw, because I would like to let our readers know that I'm a very skeptical person. By being a career teacher, one is very skeptical. Let's face it. Good prose is good prose, otherwise it's not. And when you read good prose, you are rather effusive about it because of the lack of good prose otherwise. So I can tell you this, Mr. Kochery, that I'm completely bowled over by your prose, and I think our readers will, of course, be
Thank
as
you.
bowled over when they get a hold over your book. And people, I think Shushuta has given us a link where you can actually see where it is
Being to Amazon,
be found. And then, of course, now what are you waiting for? That's what I would like to ask. What are you waiting for? If I've read it and I've liked it, go ahead and do the same. And
Yeah, that's
looking
that's right.
forward
We will be sharing the
to having
link
another
that
session with you,
people
Mr.
can
Kochery.
purchase the book as well. The Amazon link where they can purchase the book. Right.
Yes,
Okay.
and we're looking forward to having another session with Shibu once again. And thank you so much for being such patient listeners to our session. And thank you, Shushruta and Mona, for providing this platform for the session.
Right. So Mona, I think let's end the session right quickly.
Thank you so much, Ruma and Shibu. I can't begin to tell you how interesting, how exciting, how engaging the session was. Thank you so much. I'm sure the readers have had a fantastic evening listening to you all for the last 1 hour. And we look forward to more such sessions. A big thank you to Shibu and Ruma and viewers. As Ruma just said, I'm reiterating, please buy the copy of a book which the Amazon link. We will be giving the link, and you just go there and purchase the book Faith and the Beloved, and you won't regret it. As Ruma said, you won't. I second that. Thank you so much,
Absolutely.
Ruma, for putting up the book. And thank you, Shibu, for your time. Thank you, Ruma, for your time and all your effort. We enjoyed your reading. We enjoyed the conversation, the questions, the responses. Thank you so much. Have a very good evening.
The same to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.